Radio, discussing the business of making and spending money.
Business and economy cycles, and of course issues of businesses around the world. My name is Innocent Odo. I'm glad to welcome you to the new year. I think this is my first program for the new year, and like you can see, it's all smiles as we thank God we all arrived safely into the new year. And so to set the ball rolling on the business of the day, we are going to discuss the issues concerning renewable energy as a credible alternative to the ailing electricity sector of the country. And we are also looking at how to harness the enormous potential in this sector to provide a credible alternative to electricity in the country. And so we are going to look at the variables, we're going to look at the areas of opportunities, we're going to look at challenges, and we're going to look at how we're going, of course, to harness this very important sector to serve as a fillip to the Nigerian economy, especially now that we are having startup businesses that rely on this type of sector. So I'm not alone in the studio. I'm here with my regular guest, with whom I'm going to do justice to this important, very important topic that has always been there for us. And since last year, he had made his very enormous contribution to ensure that this particular program continues to run on air with his very in-depth analysis on issues concerning electricity, power sector, ICT, and the rest of them. He's no other than Hanil Jafaru, who is an expert in ICT. Let me formally welcome you to the new year. Hanil.
Welcome to the new year.
Happy
Thank
New
you
Year
so much. Same to you. Same to you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Now, the business of the day. We're talking about resolving the perpetual crisis in the electricity sector using renewable energy as an alternative, a credible alternative. And we have potential, very enormous potential in this sector. But then I do not know whether we have harnessed this to the benefit of the country. If you are asked to assess the renewable energy system in Nigeria, what would be your take on that?
Well, it's once again it's good to start the year with you on this program. So now my take on the renewable energy system in Nigeria. If you want to look at statistics, about 70 over 70% of our power generation comes from renewable energy, majorly hydro.
Yes.
But we have only capitalized on the possibilities in hydro. We've neglected other aspects of renewable energy,
like solar,
and
the wind energy,
the
biomass,
yes. And all that. So if we don't capitalize on this, there is not all part of the country that we have hydro. There are some states that don't have the capacity to generate, except we decide to create a dam that can now facilitate the generation of hydro power. So if we're to assess from what we have currently running to the hydro that we have currently running, the total power generation and the renewable power generation that we have, we're doing well. Looking at over 70% of our electricity generated from a renewable source. But if we were assessing it from the broader perspective, where the end users now are benefiting from this renewable, from the electricity, then we are not doing well, both in the area of the renewable and also the main regular source of electricity power generation. So there are a whole lot of opportunities in that sector. There's the wind turbine that we can leverage on, that the northern part of the country, especially the desert area, can capitalize on. There is the solar that the whole of Nigeria can capitalize on it. Looking at, in fact, solar is one area that individuals are beginning to explore, not waiting for government intervention and government possible regulation. Individuals' houses, and I'm trying to see how they can have solar with their power bank, their battery bank, sorry, where the power, the electricity generated by the solar and stored in the battery bank, and through the inverter it powers the house. So now you find out that modern plazas and infrastructural buildings are also looking at that possibility, especially the real estate areas where they build plazas and building and office spaces. They sell as part of their feature in selling that property. They tell you that you have 24 hours electricity supply. Majority of that power generation will come from solar, because the zinc, there are now zincs that are now solar based zincs. So or instead of you roofing your house or your building with the regular zinc or regular roof, you can decide to use a solar based roof. So the solar based roof has a way of connecting to each other to send the power to the battery bank, where it can now lighten up the house. So you find out that it's all renewable source and all that. Then we can also capitalize on, we can expand the reach of our hydro power generation. Lastly, it's been, we've not really maximized the full potential of the hydro power, and that I think we can also maximize.
Okay, like the hydropower you talked about and the wind turbine you mentioned, a lot of these projects are actually said to be on the pilot scheme. They've not been expanded, like we said, to bring up the basic things necessary to power it, to make it more efficient. I don't understand why a government that wants to invest in this sector, or if you like, individuals and stakeholders who want to invest in this sector, have not taken into consideration what it now takes to be able to lift this from the pilot scheme, some of these projects, to make it an actual program that can now generate the power source that people require.
I think the challenge is from the policies that we have. Power generation is in the exclusive list, and that is a huge concern for investors. Now, the government, from the dismantling of the NEPA to PHCN, and from PHCN to the necessary discourse and all that, the privatization of the power sector, we realize that the government is largely in charge of the generating power transmission. Now there is and the government largely license who generates power, and there are just so many policies that restrict and limit investors from come into to invest. So there are many areas that needs to be clearly spelled out. The first thing is that personally, I don't see. I would want a competition in the transmission sector, instead of us having one person, which is the government, doing the transmission, and although even though it's doing it, it does not have the full infrastructure, the capacity the enablement to transmit this power. Now we have the capacity to generate up to 12,000 megawatts from what's available in the media, and we've generated just thereabout maximum about 7,000 to 8,000. Yes. So the reason, even the 7,000 to 8,000 that we are generating, transmitting it now to the discos, it's now an issue, because we don't have the transmitting capacity to transmit that much, and that was largely the reasons why we had a whole lot of power shortage last year, with the power going down and all that. So there are a lot of restructuring that needs to go in that area.
Yes,
But beyond that, we also need to there are states in one of the amendments, the constitutional amendment that was sent to state for voting. One of it is moving the power sector, moving the generating from exclusive lists to concurrent lists, thereby enabling states to also generate and also encouraging private sector to come into the. There are states that are there are individuals that are now generating power, like Femi Otodola that tends to leave the oil sector and went into the energy sector for the purpose of generating power. There's also a power generation plant in Benin that tends to be giving the Benco, that's the Benin electricity company, a huge competition in the air, because most individuals are now moving to that generating unit instead of the Benco. So now there is not the place of government trying to ensure that we begin to see all that in at different state level. You find out that okay, now it's going to boost the service area of distribution companies. It's also going to ensure that they make available power, because now it's pay as you use. You get, so if you don't use, you won't pay. And if people are leaving, let's work on an assumption that there is another distribution agency outside AEDC that is in Abuja, and there is that guarantee that distribution agency would give you 24 hours power. Would you as an organization want to remain in AEDC? No. So we should also create that enabling environment for others to come and source their power, distribute their power, so that there's just a whole lot of policies that need to come into place beyond the whole. And now we are looking at the ICT sector, that is a huge consumer of power. Looking at the data center infrastructures that organizations are looking into. Now Amazon, Google is coming to Lagos, and coming to Lagos to do what? To set up their own data center. Amazon was sometime last year or 2 years ago went to South Africa, and there is that possibility that they also come to Lagos or come to Nigeria. Let me not be specific the area they would go to. So the data center now, from statistics, it shows that 25%, if I'm not mistaken, of the world's power is being consumed by data center. And that number is going to be on the increase with the coming on board of Internet of Things, robotic, artificial intelligence. So we need to ensure that we put our power sector well and ready for the fourth industrial revolution that is coming.
Okay, thank God we are talking about trying to restructure the sector, and of course giving it the enabling capacity to grow more than its present status now. The challenge, however, is that Nigeria also has what they call a Nigeria Renewable Energy Master Plan. That master plan intends to grow the renewable energy electricity to about 36% by 2030 from the current 13% that they already have now. So it's an ambitious move, no doubt. But what does it require for them to do? You mentioned restructuring. What specifically? What do we really restructure in this sector to ensure that the master plan that they have, unleashed, if I may use that word, will be realistic, so to speak? Because the ambition is also to make renewable energy to contribute 10% of the electricity mix in the entire country. Now we're also talking about climate change and clean energy. Remember that President Muhammadu Buhari committed, Nigeria to zero net emission by 2060 during the COP 26, that was held, I think, in Glasgow. So that's one of the major steps that the government has taken to ensure that we also get clean energy through renewable sources. We are going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll continue with the discussion on resolving Nigeria's energy crisis through renewable energy technology. Don't go away.
For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.
Money Radio, discussing the business of making and spending money.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, we are on to Money Radio, our leadership podcast, and we're talking about resolving Nigeria's energy crisis through renewable energy technology. I've been in the studio with ICT expert Haniel Jafaru doing justice to this important topic. Haniel, before we went on that short break, we're talking about making renewable energy to contribute at least 10% of the total energy and total electricity mix in Nigeria. That is realistic, so to speak. But then you talked about restructuring that sector to meet the demands, to unlock the opportunities there for areas like ICT to take it. Data consumption, of course, they consume a lot of electricity, and we need to provide that through renewable source. Now, the ambition of the Nigerian Renewable Energy Master Plan is to ensure that they reach about 36% from the current 13% now by 2030. 2030 is just about how many years now? In just about 7 years. So, how realistic would you think these moves are, and what steps do you think can be taken to ensure that they are actualized?
Well, as long as we can think about it, I believe that it's a doable project. But beyond it being a doable project, we should now ask ourselves, would we be willing to? Because people would get hurt. Businesses that rely on importation of power generating sets would go down. The cabals in that sector would toes will be stepped upon. So those are things we need to, because you don't just come and say we want to do this and not put in the fight back possibility.
Yeah.
But even beyond that, you made mention of the fact that the president committed the country by ensuring zero emission of carbon. The challenge I have with that commitment is not from the power generation. We can have zero emission from power generation, but Nigeria is among, if not among the least countries with we have low power carbon emission, as long as it comes from the area of power generation. But looking about cars that emit carbon, cars whose engines are dead, that are still plying the road, looking about the afforestation and burning of bushes without permission, looking at the use of cooking gas in cooking firewood in rural area. By the time you combine all the firewood that is being used in our rural area, combine all the dead cars that are still on the street plying the road and emitting carbon air. Look at the bush that are being burned. These three areas, you find out that the amount of carbon we emit is almost equivalent to it. In fact, that made us adding that to the very small amount we emit from power generation. You find out that now it has not capacitated us to that area where we fall among those that emit a whole lot of carbon. So it's not about why the power generating set carbon emission is important. We should also look at how do we manage the cars, how do we manage the firewood in the village that our mom use, how do we manage burning of bushes with or without permission and all that. By the time we look at all this, it's very important.
It's a whole dimension.
So you don't look at one side and ignore the other side. it should be holistic.
Yeah, I think there's a government agency that is actually taking that responsibility to ensure that the issue of burning, using firewood, cutting down trees to use for firewood, for instance, is reduced to the barest minimum. That's a National Agency for Science, Engineering, and Infrastructure, NASENI. Now, they had a recent collaboration with a German firm to produce what they call a cooking stove, that uses some derivatives, to power it. So that cooking stove is being distributed across the federation. I know that over 4,000 units of it have actually been distributed across the federation, and more of it are still being produced to be distributed to rural women to ensure that they to reduce the impact of this, cutting down trees and using for. I don't know how much that can go. It's a very token effort, but our population, how we are. The regulatory system is not too, powerful enough to be able to stop people from going into the bushes and cutting down the trees and burning down the bushes and all those kind of things. At the end of the day, we are still struggling, despite all the effort being made by governments, for instance, to curtail some of these things you mentioned.
Sorry, while I would not ignore the effort they are making,
Yes,
in ensuring that is addressed, I would say producing 4,000 units
or be more. They are
yes. To comparing it to the population size. 1, 2, you're bringing a product where they now start spending money to cook.
Yes,
because you now need to refill, buy certain things. Before you don't with your fire, you just go to the forest and cut wood. You just go to the forest and you cut wood and you bring it. So what you need there is strength, not money. So is that one truly addressing the issue? People decide to say, okay, let's stop cooking with kerosene and start cooking with gas, and the cost of gas is something else. So people have fall back to their kerosene. So
the kerosene is
now very
high.
Extremely high. So people are now okay. Now all those that do what's it called cooking mass meal for weddings, do you think they use gas?
No, they don't.
Do you think they use kerosene?
No, I have witnessed several.
They are still using
the firewood. Yes.
The coal. So what's one? If those in the, I'm talking about, we haven't talking about those in the city. We're not talking about
even those in the city. That's what they now use.
That's what they now use. So
weddings and
exactly.
Major occasions.
They should. Everything is strategic.
Yes.
They can't just say that I want to buy. In fact, if that is the first phase, it's a failed first phase. Even though that 4,000 cannot go as pilot. If truly we're sincere and want to resolve this thing, 4,000 units cannot even go as a pilot phase.
They started in Abuja, for instance, about 4,000 units were distributed to women. Those of them from different parts of Abuja, from Buhari and the rest of them, all got their what they call efficient cooking stove. But then they have already started going around the states. They were in National State some days ago, where they also distributed over 1,000 units of that kind of cooking stove.
I told you that everything about implementation must be strategic. I'm always very particular about implementing things strategic. Just let's implement. Let there be strategy. Why start from Abuja? What's the motive behind starting from Abuja? How were you able to get? How do you get the feedback? It's better you go to a location, focus on that location, do the distribution there. It's easier for you to go back to that location, get your feedback, get your data, analyze your data, then take a decision based on the data that have been gotten. Yes. Then you go to another location, do a test phase again. That's how you implement. Not you give to some. How do you get the feedback? You will collect their numbers and all that. But anyway, again, that's why I started by saying I would not ignore their efforts in ensure at least they've been able to identify the fact that there is need for that to be done. get, but there's a whole lot of things that needs to be done, especially in the area of carbon emission. A whole lot
of things need to be done.
Our system,
maybe they need to, like you said, put a real strategy in place to ensure that this whole thing is curtailed. Because we talk about being members of the global community, we make all the commitments around around the climate change. The other one was in Glasgow in 2026. Then we had a recent one in Egypt, which is COP27. And I believe that, yes, the international community, the bigger powers, the bigger countries are trying to make more commitment now to ensure that they send resources to African countries, for instance, to also help them ameliorate the impact of the climate change. And then also, boost their capacity to ensure that their regulatory framework, trying to curtail some of these, areas that push up this challenge to us, are completely reduced. But this is one area that will always pose a serious challenge to us as a people, and we must act now to ensure that what we have as a resource can be utilized to promote our industries, to promote ICT that is becoming really, really helpful to the economy, especially in the area of now that we have been suffering from economic backward. ICT have added like 18.7% or thereabout to the nation's economy, which is very, very commendable. And you see that the sector is growing. The other day, the president was very emphatic and very, very proud about the $547 million that was procured from the sale of auction to this 3.7 5G for 5G spectrum. That's a great amount of money that is realized. So you can say that that sector is already powering the economy, and therefore it also needs this base, this electricity, this power sector to make it even more efficient. So going forward, Haniel, what do you think we must now put in place to ensure that yes, it's a competitive world. We belong to that world and we must compete. Our wind energy, for instance, has not been totally or completely exploited. The solar energy, we still lack some of its technology as a result of the fact that some of our own people have not been trained properly, even in the installation of the solar system. So what do you think we must now do to train and retrain ourselves, going forward, to ensure that wind energy, the solar, the biomass are completely now harnessed, either through policies or through through other measures?
Okay, well, for the solar, I believe we have the intellectual capacity already on ground. It's just that we don't have. It's not in large scale.
Okay.
Most persons issue contracts to solar consultants to come install a solar panel for their plazas, but you've not seen a station whereby there is a landmass dedicated for solar for a community or for a state or for a local government. It has not been that large. So, and the reason it has not been that large is because the constitution does not permit you to generate more than 1 megawatt. When you're generating more than 1 megawatt, then it has to be formal.
Yes.
So that has made it look as if we have not exploited that area. Then for wind, we have not gone into that sector completely. We've not been able to power our buildings and infrastructure properties via wind. So that's where we need training. That's where NASENI needs to come in to train people on wind power generation. Then hydro is always on a large scale. You don't see hydro on a small scale, it's usually on a large scale, and that would require funding. And we already have that personnel running that in the country. That's why we have about 70%, over 70% of our power generated by hydro. So that's that. I think once we're able to put in the right restructuring in that area, especially as to do a full privatization of that sector, then let government fully focus on regulation, just the way it did for the telecoms industry. I think we're going to get it right.
All right. we have been discussing on how to resolve the perpetual electricity crisis in the country by using the renewable energy as alternative. I've been in the studio with ICT expert Hanel Jafar. Hanel, thank you once again for joining us. It is on that note that we draw the curtains on today's edition of Morning Radio. We promise to bring you a bumper edition when next will come. Thank you and remain blessed.
Thank you for watching. For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.